So this evening I'm going to talk a little bit about some material that's in this book, Seven Works of Vasubandhu by Stefan Anacker. Something we study here. What days do we study?
Tuesday.
Tuesdays. We study every Tuesday at noon. We study, I think we're studying the 30 verses. So this is a little bit different. This is something we've also studied here. This is from the teaching of the three own beings. And the title of this talk comes from the third stanza of this work. And the title is Non-Otherness. Another way this is taught is called empty of other. Empty of other. So just simply put, it's wherever you look, there isn't anything that's other. But empty of the other. Something that self-centered mind is constantly leaping to conclusions about. They said, he did, they shouldn't, they should, they, them, that. And so just to read this, I'm not going to go through the whole thing. It's just one verse at a time is probably enough. So the constant state of not being found, of how it appears, constant state of not being found, of how it appears, in that which appears. So whatever's appearing has a how to it. Something appears and we immediately put something on it. It's good, it's bad, it's ours, it's theirs. I don't know what it is. Any commentary on that at all turns it into what's called in this teaching the three natures, the Tri-svabhava-nirdesa of the constructed, the interdependent, and the fulfilled. So the constructed is what is other. That's what we put on top of what appears. We actually separate ourselves from our birthright of being not separate from anything, of being already Buddha. We separate that through, well, complicated hope and fear, passion, aggression, ignorance. Excuse me. So the constant state of not being found, of how it appears, in that which appears, can be known as the fulfilled, or can be known as ultimate truth, is another way of saying it. Because of its state of non-otherness. So because of its state of non-other, that there isn't an other. Everything is readily available to one who is not looking at other and believing in their thought patterns, or for that matter, disbelieving in their thought pattern. So this is a way that Vasubandhu back in the 4th century came up with, talked about a lot of stuff. But the main thing is this is kind of the basis of the Vijnanavada, or the consciousness only, or mind only, or perception only. Like you, the way I put this is everything is perception. So what is being perceived is not exactly what you thought it was. In other words, imaginary. And the other way of looking at it is there isn't actually anybody here perceiving anything, because that's also what? Imputed, which means that it's thought up, it's invented. It's an invention based on polarity, push and pull. One of the most obvious kinds of polarity is good and evil. We actually think there is good and there is evil. Misunderstanding. A simpler, maybe a little bit more accessible form of that is hope and fear. We think that hope is better than fear, but it's not separate from fear. So what we do in the practice of sitting meditation, in an awareness practice, and in a spiritual path, whether we come in here and we're doing the part of it where we face the wall and strengthen the awareness, shikantaza, or whether we take ourselves, get together in a group or sangha, a community of people who are studying this material, come together and study the material. It is not about understanding the material. It has something to do with it, but it's mainly about getting together and being presented with this kind of material that is impossible to understand intellectually, other than just so far. Put yourself in that position so that that area of the mind gets stretched, so that the thinking process gets stretched. So we've got the sitting practice. That's obviously stretching the open dimension that is the nature of your mind. Bringing your mind into a conceptual situation where these concepts, this particular one comes out of as far as we know, around the 4th century, a long time ago. And yet here it is still. It's a part of Chan Buddhism, it's a part of Zen Buddhism, it's a part of the teachings of all 4 lineages of Tibetan Buddhism. As far as I know, I haven't studied every one of them, but I'm fairly sure that that's true. A simple statement like this: empty of other, non-otherness. You could just use that and reflect on that, and one of the ways you can reflect on it is to see the way you continually posit something else, someone else, something else. And I'm not here to try to tell you not to do that. What am I here to tell you to do? Be aware of it. If you're aware of it, then you're no longer interfering with reality as it is being presented to you, moment by moment by moment. No longer pushing, you're no longer pulling, you're no longer propagandizing to yourself or to others. You're just here, you're just present. It's called authentic presence. And my friend up in Toronto asks, what is presence?
Maria.
It was Maria Bardowska, yeah. Maria, some time ago, sent this question: what is presence? What is the relationship between presence and awareness, presence and consciousness? And the third one is, can presence be aware of humans suffering without being present to this suffering? And I would say presence is just this. And it's authentic if there's nothing extra. In other words, no other. You might say, well, who are you present to? That's extra. The only thing that's important is just be here. Just be. If you're just this, then anything can happen. You have to be willing. When I say you have to, you don't have to do anything except probably breathe for a while. It's not that funny. So what is presence? It's just this. There's nothing that your presence, the presence is applying to, or is of, or is toward, or is witnessed by. What is the relationship between presence and awareness? Pretty much the same thing. Unless there's an object in the awareness, which then it starts to stretch out into duality. I like it, I don't like it, it's good, it's bad, I should, I shouldn't. Now what do I do? Presence and consciousness. So there's different ways of talking about awareness and consciousness. Consciousness, I think, is a being everywhere. So there isn't anything that isn't consciousness. Consciousness only. That sounds like a little lobbying there. Awareness seems to be the area where we come down to a point, or points, or some area where we're focused on some aspect that's happening in consciousness. And it seems that when we focus on one thing, we ignore everything else. But if there's an awareness about that, then it isn't an actual awareness. The awareness seems to know how to delegate, or how to deploy itself, so that there's just enough energy to see what it is you're focusing on, but you're not missing anything else. You're not missing birds, you're not missing the gravity pulling you towards the floor. You're not missing other people's movement. You're not missing your own thought patterns arising up and down and back and forth about whatever it is you're being aware of. You notice that you're adding to something. You notice that you have a judgment come in on something. Don't meddle with it. Your karma needs to play itself out. You're born, there's a certain amount of karma that is connected with this body-mind, and this person who has a certain name they were given when they were born. That needs to play itself out. Stop meddling with it. If you're in this room, you're in pretty good shape from the point of view of not meddling. You could actually begin to be what? Present. I knew it was there somewhere. And you can be genuine. Genuine means that you're no longer confused about your negative feelings. You're no longer confused about anything that's coming and going. You're not just this tiny little ball of bones and skin. So we're there for anything that arises in the six sense fields. You don't object. You don't agree. You don't look away. And you also, if you object, if suddenly or gradually or 8.5 minutes from now you find yourself just spontaneously starting to object to something, be upset about something, you don't take inventory on that. If you start taking inventory on how you're acting, you're going right back in a circle and you're right back into the carnival. Get the hell out of there. Pay your money, get on whatever rides are required, whatever stamps you've got, or whatever tickets your mom gave you. Get on, ride, leave. Do what you need to do with your life. Don't object. Don't agree. That's a hard one. We kind of know how to stop objecting, but it's very, very difficult to have something coming along that seems to be kind of agreeable, and we sink our, what do you call those, meat hooks? Vegetable hooks. Sink our vegetable hooks into them. Because we want the, finally I found a reference point that's really nice. Did I answer all of Maria's calls? It was the last one, suffering without being present to this suffering. Yeah, the whole idea of presence is once there's presence happening, you're present to everything. It doesn't mean that you're going to be tuned in to 750 billion people's heartbeats. But you also won't be avoiding them. So that if something, in terms of your own karma, which you came into this life with and for and as, anything that needs to resonate with will begin to happen. Because you're not interfering with your life. You're actually living your life moment by. You're doing this, then this happens. Then the furnace breaks. You get it fixed. And then somebody steals your lawnmower. And you go steal one. No, you think, not bad, maybe I just won't mow my lawn. And this is a kind of difficult recommendations to make because everyone's karma, everyone in this room has such different kinds of causes and conditions that come together to present. When you look in the mirror, this is a completely unique person, and isn't anyone like you. And yet, we're not separate from everyone else. That's astonishing. So these three natures, this is something you can read, I highly recommend. It's called Tri-svabhava-nirdesa, which that's hard for me to say, it's a tongue twister. A twung twister. The constructed, the interdependent, and the fulfilled. The invented, the constructed. The interdependent, in other words, dependent origination. This goes back to the teaching of the Buddha. Everything is dependently arisen. Nothing comes from its own side as an individual. And nothing goes to its other side as some other situation. It's difficult because what do we have on our face all the time? Otherness, all the time. Always that. And if you realize that there isn't any solid being here, which is possible, still have more work to do. You think there are other people who have not realized that. Contrast. The contrast is what fools us. On the other hand, and on the same hand, it's the contrast we have to look at. There's no way to practice unless we're always looking at the contrast. And don't take sides. Any questions?
What's meant by the constant state of not being found?
So the constant state of not being found means that you can't find what's being pointed out here conceptually. The constant state of not being found of how it appears. So there's no, you can't find the how anymore. Constant state of not being found of how it appears. It's just what appears. Nothing extra. Even the imaginary nature, even the how it appears, appears as the dependent. So there's the no separation goes all the way down. It's turtles all the way down. We saw a turtle.
We saved a turtle.
We saved a turtle from crossing the road. More? So it's just a negative way. Sometimes it's easier to say in a kind of a negative way. Constant state of you can't find the otherness anymore. It's gone. So the way for quite a few years, I used to say to people, I don't say it so much anymore because I don't know if it really is all that helpful, because then people kind of try to do that or see that. But when I used to say, everywhere I look, I see myself. I don't see anybody that's separate. I don't see anybody that's unenlightened. I don't see anybody that is separate from the Buddha. Yes?
So there's that phrase that Suzuki Roshi said, everyone looks like a Buddha until they open their mouths.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how you see it?
Not exactly. It looks like people are not separate from the Buddha, but it looks like they're asleep. It looks like, when I talk to someone, it looks like there's an aspect of them that is not awake. And they believe it. They actually believe the dream they're looking at. And they don't realize it's a dream. And if you realize it's a dream, you'll see that there's no way you can tell anyone about this. You might want to very desperately share that with people. But you can only share it with people who are ready to see it, and who, if you're going to help them, who really give you permission to help them. In other words, to be with them and say, however you want to say it, hold their hand or support them or encourage them. Like I say, you're halfway up the mountain. You want to know how to get up to the mountain as a metaphor for awakening? Talk to somebody who goes up and down every day, all day long, back and forth. They're never in one place. Everything is the mountain. There really isn't any journey anymore. But if you feel like you're on a journey and you're trying to find out who you are and what this is and how to put an end to your own discontent, it'd be good to talk to someone who knows about that and can possibly help you.
So you say also that you have to have someone's permission.
That's a way of saying that someone is not just saying, oh yeah, be my teacher, I'm ready, let me have it. Point out the nature of my mind. Or, I'm not talking about some kind of baloney. I'm saying someone who, they might not even say that, might not never say that, but when they sit down in front of you, you know that you have permission to talk to them or reach them in whatever means necessary to work with their consciousness or with their dilemma of being a human being. If they're suffering and they're having difficulty, you have permission. Because if you don't, then you have to, I mean, they might as well just leave, because you can't, sales pitch is not, it's not a merchandising thing. But
So when someone presents themselves to you with confusion, how do you not meddle?
so it's a difficult one to talk about. You see that any kind of meddling with the person does a couple things. One, it interferes with their karma, unless they're asking you, say, I need some help. What should I do? What could I do? This is what's happening to me. What should I do next? What could I do? That's very important. If someone will do that, I usually have an idea what should be done, but I'm not going to say, ask me stuff. Well, yeah, I guess I do say that. But you don't even have to try not to meddle. It's so obvious that you stay out of their mind, stay out of their, don't interfere with them, because they're in the process of trying to learn, trying to understand how to be genuine, and that being genuine might involve a whole lot of difficult karmic cause and effect coming up through their mind stream, and they're trying to get out of their suffering, and you know better. But what are you going to say? Suffer. Well, I have a few people that I talk to, I'm able to say that to. Most people are not ready to hear that. So you have to work with people where they're at, and slowly you maybe introduce someone to the way their mind works, or help them see it. Can't do it for them. That's why Trungpa Rinpoche said, path to awakening is one disappointment after another until the final disappointment, which is enlightenment itself. Sounds kind of corny in a way, but it's like that. It's not exactly that, but that's a pretty good way of talking to, describing it to people who are hell-bent on spiritual materialism, trying to use spiritual techniques to get somewhere psychologically and to be in a better state psychologically. A better state psychologically works for a while. It might work. Some people, that's all they can do right now. So we help them. If all a person can do is just meditate and just to settle down and stop fighting with themselves, that's not such a bad thing. But it's probably going to take a whole lot more work than that to awaken. And here again, it's so different with every person. So some people are spontaneous realizers who maybe might not practice much at all, but go through an intense traumatic situation, manage to escape by killing themselves, live through it, and awaken. That's happened. I don't recommend it.
So, what's the role of Sangha then in not meddling with someone's karma?
So, Sangha will, interacting with people who are on the same path with you will trigger things that you, in any other situation, a mundane situation, you could walk away from. That's not, I'm going to hang out with that guy, not my friend. But in Sangha, you've got a community of people who are together, who are committed to a teacher, or committed to a practice, and want to do this, and will keep getting together. That's why we do that so much here, is to get together, not because we're all such great pals. You know, we are in some ways, we are. In some ways, it's difficult to relate to someone else who is sitting a lot, who's going through turmoil, a kind of turmoil, and it's difficult to stay out of their way. But don't leave, don't abandon them, but also don't meddle with them. This doesn't mean, teach them. No, I'm not going to talk to them, they're going through this. It doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean go the other way and be overly seductive or overly patronizing with me. So again, middle way, just not too tight, not too loose. Don't leave them, don't join them, and don't correct them. Or so we see it all the time. We see it in the study group and just interaction here as far as all working together, trying to build a community here. This isn't the first community I've been involved in. But this is the first one that I've had a say-so in. And I have a pretty big say-so here, where I didn't have any before for 30 years. But I learned quite a bit. It's good to be a nobody. Or a mouse.
So is there a way to practice non-otherness?
Sure. Use the concepts insofar as however you can relate to those. Read them, maybe even memorize some of that, so you can say it to yourself a few times in the midst of being at the hardware store. You can actually look at that and see how does those concepts describe what it is that I'm trying to see here. So that's one way. Another way is when you get up off the cushion, or when you're on the cushion, see the way you, or anyone, the way we keep grasping at things. It's a twofold grasping. Grasping at self as someone who's real and solid, has been offended, or needs to be supported, or admired, or any direction. And grasping at the other who is wrong, who shouldn't have done that, who needs to stay out of my path, or who is so supportive, just such a wonderful person. I've never met such a wonderful person in my life. All of that is a bridge too far. So slow down. We're not saying we don't care about people or love them, and we're not saying we can't be, not saying don't be irritated with something, but be aware that we create that kind of thing out of who knows where all this material comes from. It's in the Yogacara tradition, they talk about the 8 consciousnesses, or the Alaya Vijnana, or the storehouse consciousness, where the habit energy or vasanas come tumbling down, or to whatever kind of metaphor you want to use, and kind of infiltrate this area that we're in, that we call our daily life. We're not separate from this incredible spiritual realm. It's vast, unending. It doesn't have an end. It doesn't have a beginning. And it's outside. And this is the only relative way you have to say it somehow, so I'm going to use a relative term. And I'll show you what I mean. It's outside time and space. This is time and space. Are you ready for the other part? It's inside time and space. This vast outerness that is out here is actually here, not out there. There is no there, as they say. First time I heard somebody that I really respected say that was Pablo Picasso. He said, "Who wants to go to the moon?" I'm paraphrasing him. Probably said the moon sucks in French. But
A question from Shane out in California.
Shane.
He asks, can you get permission without a verbal confirmation?
Yeah, I think you can. Like I was saying, someone might give you a verbal confirmation, and even though they're sincere in what they're saying, they're not really doing that. They don't really see who they're talking to. They're giving permission to their idea of you. They haven't really seen who you are. If they see who you are, they're probably going to be a little frightened. I'm not saying because you're scary. I'm not talking about in the conventional sense. I'm talking about in the sense of something starts to get kind of threatened, which is your self-centeredness. What was the other part?
That was all for him, but another question, this one from Brian in White Plains, New York. He has 2 questions. How far does our control of this situation extend? For example, ringing a bell or picking up a coffee cup. How far does this control extend? So as long as you have a concern about a spatial situation, about how far, then there's only one way I can answer that without being, and be sincere about it.
It extends indefinitely, and it extends not at all. It would have to be that way. It's relative truth. It would have to be. It would have to be this far, and I don't see any wall out there anywhere. And there's no wall here. There's no wall there. Walls are, we invent them. Build up some kind of a broom closet. Kevin.
Earlier you used the image of a carnival as a way of describing playing karma out.
Yes.
And I've heard you say before you might have to kill somebody, or who knows what.
I have.
What the
Thanks for remembering that.
You're welcome. I'm embroidering it on a pillow.
I bet you are.
But I feel like I've heard like practices for purifying.
I'm not through laughing about what you're saying. Let's look at that pillow. They have to go somebody. Those would sell. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I've interrupted you.
No, it's fine. So okay. I guess I understand that, but I also understand that relatively there's some behavior that, could get you locked up.
Sure.
And through awareness practice, you can see those impulses arising.
You can.
Where is there like good meddling and bad meddling, relatively speaking, like
with others or yourself?
With yourself.
I think if you're the way it looks here, rather than say I think, the way it looks is if you sit enough, if you stretch that awareness, I don't know how else to say it, and this is based on not being told something, but looking at my own situation and that of others that I've talked to over the years. It looks like a lot of sitting practice, along with some conceptual structures that help, like the three natures, or the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path. Just knowing about the three poisons is really sometimes extremely helpful to see that we push, we pull, or we shut down. Those are the three ways we avoid the truth of everything. And so I think if there's enough awareness practice going on that you'll a natural kind of boundary will begin to arise. This is what, like a philosopher, Bonhoeffer has a title of one of his works called Situation Ethics. And I've always liked the title to that. And I don't know if I've read the book or not, probably not. But that situation ethics, that you get your ethics from the situation rather than your ethical because you follow certain rules and laws about ethical behavior. This is a misunderstanding, and it's a lower level of control situation, which is even in the Zen Soto, Zen Rinzai Zen, it's Zen community all over. This is kind of promoted. We got to have all these rules, and you need to sign on the dotted line and so on. I think that's might be maybe safer. I don't know. That might create more problems to do that. So I would say we need to trust ourselves. We need to trust our sanity and our insanity. You need to trust the sanity to be sane and trust the insanity to be insane. So then you can actually see what it is. You're no longer looking at the closet door wondering what's making all that racket in there. You go over and look, see what it is. Insanity. But it's no indictment of anyone. If you begin to look at everyone has a certain version of kind of spinning in circles and operating in such a way that's not in their best interest. This is just everywhere. It's rampant. People operating in ways that aren't really supportive. They aren't good. As it says, do good, don't do harm, be with all things. That's the vow we receive, observe. More?
What does it mean to purify karma?
So the way I talk about that is karma is already pure, but we keep meddling with the whole thing. So sometimes we need to go through some kind of a purification activity or process or ritual. Ritualized situations are very hard to understand because it feels like, well, what is this about? You know, here I am doing this hocus pocus. And so if someone has trouble with doing rituals, it means they're attached to forms. If you come in here and do these forms for a few years, you won't be attached to them. You'll be able to do the forms, and the forms will be functioning in your mind in a way that you won't be able to get a credential for, other than maybe be admired because you know how to chant or something. But it operates in an area where the thinking process, the consciousness, and the whole body-mind complex, all of this whole matrix or this whole sensorium that is functioning as it is functioning together. Trungpa Rinpoche talked about synchronizing body and mind. Just bringing things so you're not thinking about something else when you're driving. You know, so you're just here, you're just driving. And so all of the sitting form is important, the studying form is important, and some kind of body, speech, mind, chanting sutras or doing something along that line. It wouldn't have to be a lot. If you're really averse to doing that, it wouldn't have to be a lot, but I think it's a good thing to do. More? Further questions from anyone?
How do you know if you're meddling with someone's karma?
Because they'll scowl at you. Well, I sometimes say, don't do anything unless you have to. And if you do it that way, then you'll see something is drawing you that way, but you're having a little maybe mini conversation with yourself. You might even be saying to yourself, I don't really have to do that. I don't really have to step into that. I don't have to say this. I don't have to do anything about it. I don't have to smile. I don't have to leave the room. I don't have to do anything. You can just be here. And something about that allows us to see the extra meddling thing is not so much about actually really wanting to help them. It's could be about wanting to be a helper, which is an identity that a lot of people take up. Well, I'll just be a helper, and then they never have to look at themselves because they always tell themselves how much I just don't have time for myself. I'm just always helping others. Sometimes it's you run into people like that are really deeply into that. It's quite aggravating to listen to it because you know it's really about them. It's not that they don't want to help people. It's just that a lot of it is about them being seen as a helper. And so I think the intention, the motivation around it will show up. So if someone is having difficulty with something that you feel like you've triggered, like they've talked to you and you've said something and suddenly they're going into the dumps over something you said or did, stay the hell away from them. I'm not saying abandon them, run away, but I'm saying let them, recognize that they've been triggered by something, and if you're all attached to who you are and making sure you're a good guy, then you might want to go and kind of, massage their seventh consciousness or something, so to squeeze out some of the pain and suffering. But leave them alone. Yes?
What is the point of discipline if all karma is pure?
Because it's not two. And you don't realize it. We think there are things that are polluted and things that are pure. We think things are pure and impure. We're hooked on duality, plus and minus. So you do so that you can so you can understand emptiness. So you can understand form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. The same is true of feeling, perception, concept, consciousness. So we need to do the practice. Like I was saying, everybody's already awakened. You're already the Buddha. You're already not separate from ultimate reality. But having this incredible consciousness show up in the sixth sense feels, their objects, and in this apparent three-dimensional place that we're in, it's an astonishing place, and it's very easy to get sucked into the confusion, into the gold mine and into the urinal, you know, into the polarity of it. I think you've got to keep away from that. We have to get to this, and our little people are indoctrinated into that also. They're never taught about how to just fundamentally be genuine. We take it away from them quite often, maybe not all the time. So we would go through the purification process so that you have a better understanding of what that whole dynamic is about. Most of the tantric practices are about purification. Vajra, Varahi, Vajra Yogini, even the ones like green Tara, white Tara, Chenrezig, those are about purifying something that's already pure. We think we're impure. So we ask for this. We supplicate an apparent separation. It's a tantric ritualized practice which addresses relative truth and ultimate truth. Creation, completion. And that's why it's such a powerful teaching. We're doing it, but something very similar right here. Now, the Tibetan Lamas might not agree with that, but I've practiced enough of that to know what they're doing. Yes?
Question from Patrick out in Seattle.
All right.
He asks, are you trying to make me more crazy or less crazy?
I'm trying to drive you right out of your mind. Does it work? So I understand where it could be maybe challenging, but to respond to your question, I'm trying to encourage you to look at your craziness and don't do anything about it. This is an awareness practice. It is not a get better therapy, fix yourself. It's not anything like that. It's awareness. And even the purification practices are awareness. And the beginning is to see how impure everything is. And then to see what is pure. Then we actually bring our mind into what is purity? What does it mean to be pure? That's a relative thing. What am I doing here? That's what's so powerful, to actually sit and do a practice that your ego is screaming at you. This is meaningless. You do this one more time and I'm going to abandon you. You say, really? The ego does not want, the ego wants to, as Trungpa Rinpoche used to say, witness its own funeral. And it can't, because it can't witness it, because it has to dissolve. Yes?
So that being said, at what point does discipline become no discipline?
When you stop making choices about anything. It's not two. You stop deciding anything. I mean, I'm not saying you don't make some decisions, but there's no, the ultimate decision kind of thing of right and wrong and all of that it's just not there.
But there's still the need to function in relative society. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't go around killing people just because we're not making choices. How does discipline play a role in that kind of function?
So, I understand what you're saying, but give me a more crisp question. That's a little bit too conversational for this situation.
How should one discipline oneself in the relative world?
Well, if you're a practitioner, then find a teacher. Find, if it's a spiritual path that you're looking to, if you have the understanding, you see that's probably what I should do, then find a teacher, find this kind of situation, a community, and find a teaching, and find a practice, and follow the forms. I mean, actually do the practice. So actually put yourself in that boiler. The other thing Trungpa said, an image he said that just really irritated me when I heard it, because I realized I was kind of in for it. He said, somewhere in one of the, I don't know if it's in Cutting Through or one of those, I can't remember, but it's like you're put into a big pot where they're being boiled. You're like a vegetable. And there's one place where the carrot pops up and he says, "You're too orange, get back down in there." Does anybody know where that's at? No. So, you wouldn't be in here if you didn't have some kind of an interest, different levels of it, some kind of interest in trying to see what is this? What is it that's actually going on? So, and then you find out you need to see it yourself. And this is a way that you can do it. Yes, sir.
How is acting out one's neuroses a form of discipline?
I didn't say anything about acting out your neurosis.
Well, I'm not saying you did.
Oh, good. So that's still a question, though?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
How is acting out your neurosis a form of discipline?
Well, in a sense that you're asking us to be genuine, and in so doing, our neuroses will arise.
Yes.
And if we're being genuine, those neuroses may play themselves out, as we
It might.
speak karma in this sense. So how is it that acting out these neuroses is genuine, is a form of discipline?
So let me say it this way. I don't really encourage people to act out. When I said, coming back to Kevin's question about you may have to kill somebody, may even be yourself, I'm just saying the forces of things are very powerful. And so if you bring a lot of awareness to the situation, you may do a lot less and you may live through it. And the same thing with not trying to stuff or change or modify your neurotic behavior, to use that same word, but to feel it, to feel that. Not to actually, I sometimes say, often say, don't hook up your vocal cords. So that you're that neurotic behavior or that aggression or that whatever it is that you're feeling, that's there for you to feel and experience and actually allow your karma to come through you, not as an outward activity where you go out and lash out at the world or speak out, but that you actually feel it. You become, the word is responsible. You have the ability to respond, responsible to what arises in your own mind. And you don't necessarily take that out and get rid of that energy on somebody else or some other thing. The same goes with and don't misunderstand. I don't have anything against jogging, but if every time you have difficulty come up, you take it out and you jog, you kind of disperse that. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I'm saying as a spiritual path, you might want to jog half as much, and when that energy comes up, sit down. I'm not even saying meditate, just sit still and watch the energy. You might be doing out here in the garden. You might be on your back porch. You might be laying in bed. You might, any number of things where you could just be with whatever's arising. Have you noticed that? How something arises we don't like and we want to do something with it. We want to blame somebody. We want to blame ourselves. We want to blame somebody else. Or we want to distract ourselves from it by getting rid of it.
So, as I've seen and as you've seen, there are times when these activities, these actions, this karmic behavior is undeniable. We cannot resist it. Something is going to happen. We're going to act it out. And at that point, without passion, aggression, or ignorance, it still looks like neurotic behavior. Is that still discipline?
Maybe. Again, coming back to what I was saying a little while, it's extremely individual. And I would say just be as straightforward as we can. Anyone here, you or anyone else, just be as straightforward as you can. You're going to have to do it yourself. And how you do that has a lot to do with how much you can not deceive yourself into thinking what you're doing is right, but somebody else is doing is wrong. It's so tempting. It's so seductive to do that. And one of the ways you can do that, work with that, is to spend a lot of time on the cushion looking at what arises in that blue sky of your mind. Because if you don't do that, then you start to believe that one cloud is right and the other was wrong, and this one needs to be eliminated. Just a metaphor for it. So a lot of awareness practice in terms of, and even then, it can come up, and then we start having a conversation. Geez, I've done all this sitting, and I still feel like, you know, killing somebody, or I still feel like I'm being mistreated, or I still feel like. So we're always looking for some kind of gaining idea, and this is why, near as I can tell, this is why Rinpoche talked about disappointments. It's extremely disappointing to work over a period of time with an ego mind that will not stop. It will not go away. You have to see that it is unreal, and in order to see that it is made up, it's the parikalpa, it's the imaginary nature. We imagine there's a self, and we imagine there's an other, and we go to war. It happens all over the world. Situation. It happens in the monastery. It happens all over. More?
No, thank you.
Thank you for this question. Yes, Evan.
Well, I just read an article that doctors say don't run when you're mad because it causes heart attacks. But anyway,
Good one.
my question though, sometimes with the image of seeds, planting seeds
Yes.
is used for karma. So as you described it, would you say that the feeling of the desire to act is the fruition of that karmic seed?
Be more specific.
Meaning, if I have like a karmic predilection to, I don't know, punch somebody.
Yes.
And over the years I've been bopping people in the face, and then through a strong awareness practice I feel the urge to do it and feel whatever that fire is by not acting out. Is that the completion of a karmic cycle, that feeling?
No. If the feeling is, to put it very literal, and this did not come out of a book. This comes out of being 76 years old. When the feeling of aggression starts to arise, and all you do is feel the texture. You have no stories. There's no little word balloons pop out of it. There's no post-it notes on it. It's just raw aggression. And when it comes up in your brain pan, or however you want to say it, in your experience, do nothing. Don't push on it, not even a little bit. The pushing on it comes from being afraid of it. Like, what if it gets a hold of me and I do hit somebody? It seems that you have to actually witness it completely, totally, all the way down, all the interstices, all the gaps, all the texture, all the colors in that, thoroughly, so that that vasana or habit energy coming out of past karma from the 14th century or wherever it may be, or from who knows where, it could be coming from outer space. But whatever that is that's arising that was unsummoned, that somehow has gotten into our mind or into our heart or into our consciousness, do nothing with it. Just experience it. And if you sit a lot, you'll have a lot more room, to use the relative way of talking. There'll be a bigger sky for these tsunamis to come through, these thunder clouds or lightning bolts or whatever they are. Just as it says in Atisha 7 Points of Mind Training and the ultimate teachings, rest in the nature of Alaya. Rest in the nature of the unborn. Because who you are is unborn and unceasing. To actually find that, you can find that by sitting practice of meditation. You can find the unborn quality. And when that's happening, then this kind of energy it can't find a self. It's still there, and it still comes roaring out of the void into your life, and there's nobody here. All the doors are blown off the seventh consciousness. There's no longer any grasping, rejecting, accepting, rejecting, shutting down in the seventh. There's a straight line right from the alaya all the way back to the sense of smell. It's the way of talking about it. Actually, Everything I said's a lie. You knew that, though. Very good, thank you so much.
Stand and offer the dedication of merit. I'd also like to remind everybody about our donation boxes on the hallway, as well as this Saturday is our all day. So do please come and join us. We have lots of work projects.
May the merit of this penetrate into all places, so that we and every sentient being together can realize the Buddha's way. Jiho San Ji Shihu Shi Son Bu Sa Moko Sa Moko Jahoromi. The 10 directions, the 3 worlds, all Buddhas, all venerable ones, Bodhisattvas, Mahasattvas, the great Prajna, Paramita.
O Buddhas and Bodhisattvas of the 10 directions and the 3 times, please hear us. Please come down out of the light and protect Sokukoji Buddhist Temple Monastery, our Sangha, families, friends, and visitors. Heal everyone who is unhappy, sick, or suffering, and fill them with light.